Have you ever looked at your art and thought, I'm never going to make money as an artist, who would want to pay for this? Well, a lot of people actually. I've been selling my art part-time for about a year now. Before then, I'd taken a little bit of commission work, but I took a full break to practice my art style and feel more confident about it. I've been drawing my entire life, but had only started taking art seriously 2 years ago when I began studying it in university. Before this, I was studying theatre, so I'm still learning as I go. I like to consider myself a beginner artist, and I make plenty of money off my own art, so here are some ways that you too can also sell your art. So, making money online has its own pros and cons. The pros being it's easy to get started, it's great for building your portfolio, you can charge what you want, and you can also control your workflow. However, the cons are you need to kind of have self-discipline and you have to build that audience, you have to find your niche, and also pricing what seems fair. Now, with the pros, it's so easy to get started with selling online. This can be commissions, selling bases, assets. Building a portfolio is great for selling online because it shows people what services you can actually offer. Charging what you want can have its pros and cons. However, if you're kind of sick of working retail jobs and feeling like the work that you're doing is kind of not worth what you're being paid, at least with art, you can kind of price your own art at the value that you feel like it deserves. Controlling your own workflow is a massive pro for me selling my own art online because I have really awkward schedules where I'm a night owl, I don't really want to wake up early, so if I need to work through the night then I can. But this is where the needing to have self-discipline con comes in. Having self-discipline is so important for selling art online. It's important for any kind of creative job. Especially if you're working from home, it can be really easy to tell yourself that you'll just do it later. You'll eat some food, you'll go have a nap, and you'll do it later. But this is why it's so important to have self-discipline. You need to give yourself a schedule. If it's a checklist or that you tell yourself you're going to work at this time, anything is better than just saying that you'll do it later. Having to build an audience is also a little tricky. I feel like I have to build my audience through social media, so you might want to get something ready like CapCut or short form content or even long form content to help yourself get out into the world to advertise yourself. Now, don't get me wrong, we're not creating content for the sake of gaining followers. It's simply a way to advertise yourself and what kind of services that you have to offer. In my experience, I've gained a lot more clients and better relationships through word of mouth and through meeting people in real life. But just for the sake of this section being solely about the internet and doing stuff online, you can create just as close relationships over the internet. I would also recommend networking in your local area. This is a little bit easier in a city, but even in your local village, you can find clients who are looking for simple art for maybe their business, or maybe they're a mum who needs some designs to print some stuff onto. Literally, I've known people in English villages who need art to print onto like bags or pencil cases. Just getting to know these people are opportunities, but this is just as achievable over the internet as it is online. So this is why I advise people to create content, but it is not for the sake of going viral or gaining followers or likes. It is simply to get your name out there and to create relationships with people. So what, your video on TikTok only got 20 likes? That's still 20 people who liked your art enough to interact with it. And then these likes and these viewers turn into potential clients, so just stay positive when it comes to this kind of thing. Finding that niche is also important because you don't want to spread yourself too thin. You want to hone into what makes you special and what makes you feel like it's worth getting to know you and to getting to know your art that someone would want to buy it. The last con being pricing what seems fair is actually really important because you don't want to scare people because your art is too expensive, but you also don't want to undersell yourself. So finding that good middle ground can take some time, but it's worth it when you do find the right price that works for you. I feel like most artists started selling their art through commissions. It's a great way to get started without having to get any materials or finding any resources. You can just start, even if you have a small social media account, you can still make good money with commissions. There are several different payment methods that I prefer. I started with PayPal, but now I use VGen, and I've also heard that Kirky is just as good. The reason I switched to VGen is because with PayPal, you do have to build your own audience and find people who are interested in buying your art. This means that you do have to advertise yourself through social media. There are different ways of doing this, for example, TikTok, Instagram Reels, also Instagram posts, and from there you can talk to each other in DMs and take payments through PayPal. However, the reason I switched to VGen is because it's a website dedicated to people looking to commission art or people who are looking to sell their art. The thing is with VGen, you do have to get a VGen code to be able to sell on there, but you can get a code through either being given a code or entering their art raffle on their Instagram. I got a code on my first time joining the art raffle. The reason they have codes is to stop people from joining who are selling AI art or joining to scam people. So this doesn't mean that you need to have good art to earn a code, it just means that they're trying to prove that you're a real artist. However, even with VGen or Kirky, you still need to build an interest in your art. A way that I started doing this is through art raffles on Instagram. I do a thing called Free Art Friday, where every Friday I will have an art raffle that people can enter and they can get free art. Credit to Cloud Soda on Instagram for this idea, my partner. Thank you very much. This actually builds suspense with your audience and a want for your art, and people will come back for more. And even if they don't win the art raffle, they still might want to buy the art in the end because they had this suspense built in their head and, oh, why not? I'll just buy it anyway. It's also a great way to build a portfolio so you can get a range of people's characters for free while also feeling like you're not just giving away art for no reason, you know? So it's honestly a win-win to do some art raffles or some art events such as this. It also helps you gain experience with customer work as well, so experiment and try some cool ideas on Instagram to build an audience. Your character here bases are a great way to mass produce a lot of work while still making a little bit of money. You basically make a base and you draw the person's character over it. It's similar to commissions in the sense that you need to still find that audience, but it just means that there's a lot less work to do. I'd say this is a little bit easier than commissions, but you do get a little less money because it is a base rather than a customized commission. Your character here bases work really well around Halloween or the holidays or Christmas because a lot of people just want to find something simple that they can celebrate the holidays with their character or their partner's character. Your character here bases are especially popular in the furry fandom, but I've also seen it work for fandoms outside of that. Payments can also be done through PayPal or VGen or Kirky, but VGen actually has a your character here option, so it's a lot easier to set up over there. I also find that your character here bases are really easy to get started with. It gives people an insight into what the final result will look like, so it's a lot easier to get people on board when it comes to your character here bases. Selling content sounds really difficult to sell. Making something that people want to buy, such as like brush packs or base packs, sounds really complicated, but it's actually super easy. VGen has a products feature where you can sell brush packs or bases, but I've also heard that Payhip and Gumroad are really good for selling bases and brush packs. Bases especially are really easy to get started with. This can be anything from poses, couple poses, and especially in the furry fandom, these are super popular. If you don't know what I mean by creating brush packs, there's a feature on Procreate and Clip Studio Paint where you can make your own brushes. I've made my own Procreate brushes before. They're actually quite easy. You can look into some tutorials to learn the basics. I'm sure the same is with Clip Studio Paint. And you'll want to showcase how your brushes work maybe on social media or in the example page of your Payhip or your VGen. And I'd also recommend creating some free brush packs so people can get interested and kind of get a taste of what you're creating. But then afterwards, once they crave more, they can start thinking, well, I want to give this creator some money because I like their brushes. For content like bases or brushes, and this goes for any of your art content anyways, I'd also recommend linking your Instagram to Pinterest or even posting on Pinterest itself, because most people find their pose references from Pinterest, let's be honest. Creators such as Melon Soup are really popular because of their bases from Pinterest, and a lot of people actually subscribe to them to Patreon for this very reason. Make sure that you make content showcasing the brushes or the poses, because this gets people interested in purchasing them, essentially. This can be through short form content such as TikTok or Instagram, or even just a simple Instagram post. Making physical products online is definitely harder to get started with. I know I definitely had some difficulties when I was making some physical products, but slowly over time I've definitely learned new things that have helped me out, and the process is a lot easier now. I actually started selling physical things at a local Christmas market at my university. I made 70 quid, which doesn't sound like a lot, but at the time it was a lot for me. I'd never made so much money from just my art before, so it definitely meant something to me. So everybody starts somewhere with this kind of thing, right? The pros and cons of creating physical products are the pros being you do get bigger sums of money, at least in my opinion. It's a lot easier to travel to a physical place and tell people, hey, this is what I'm selling, rather than shouting into the void, which is the internet. I do think you get more traction from making physical products. You also get better networking opportunities. The last pro being a hands-on experience is definitely more of a pro for me, but if you also like being a lot more hands-on with your art, then this might also be for you. And then the cons are also pricing what seems fair very similarly to commissions. You don't want to scare people from your store because your prices look too high, but you do still want to price yourself what is valued of your art. I would say it's definitely more difficult to get started when making physical products, but definitely not impossible. The thing is with making physical products, you do have to make a profit. There are table fees and travel costs, and similarly to commissions with finding a niche, you do have to find the trends in order to make your money back and sell enough to make the table fee, for example. So it is important to find out what is trending at that time. If you want to avoid all of those starting up table fees and business insurance, you can start by selling online. A lot of people start with selling on Etsy, but the reason I don't go for Etsy anymore is because there are a lot of fees. There is a reason for that. It's because Etsy uses an algorithm and a search bar in order for people to find you. So rather than having to advertise outside of the website, people usually bring you to your products. Which is not a bad thing, but when you're starting out, you don't really have the money to be paying fees. Shopify is great, it's got a lot of customization, but it's not very beginner friendly. It can cost a lot when you're paying monthly for Shopify. I think it's something like 30 quid a month, which honestly isn't that bad, but when you're freshly starting up, you don't really have that kind of money to spend. I've actually heard that Cocomart and Big Cartel are just as good, the only con being that there's not as much customization. Selling online definitely has its pros and cons. It is a little harder to find that audience. However, when you are trying to sell to a niche, selling online can actually work out pretty well for you. For example, House MD merchandise might not do that well at an anime convention, but online it's actually pretty popular and there is a big audience for it. When you are looking at selling online, do please be careful about shipping costs and tariffs. Every country is slightly different. I know that shipping to the US from the UK has a lot of difficulties at the moment. So when you do first start selling online, you might want to keep it local until you feel a little bit more confident about it. The gateway to selling physical products actually opened for me when I started selling at craft markets. I feel like everywhere has a craft market happening at some point in the year, maybe Christmas or Easter. And usually the table fees are a lot cheaper and sometimes even free at these craft markets. However, it will be a lot harder to sell niche items such as video games or anime or fandom art, but it is a great way to get started. I actually started by selling cute little cat stickers and they seemed really popular from what I remember. Anything from cute Christmas cards with cats on, or maybe like Valentine's Day cards with cats on. I don't know, I just put cats on everything to be honest. And at the time I wouldn't even say my art was that great, it was literally just a face with 2 dots. But people like that, people like simplicity. So you don't have to be Picasso to start selling your art. Selling at conventions is currently the way that I get most of my income at the moment. I don't make thousands by any means, I'm still pretty new to it, but I do think that it's a lot easier to get into than people think. When I was a kid, I used to think that you had to be some popular big artist to be able to table at conventions. You don't have to be some kind of famous artist online with 10,000 followers to sell at a convention. After all, it's business, not the influencer competition. If you've got a good amount of stock and you can prove to them that you're an honest, kind, hardworking person, then 9 times out of 10 they're going to consider you for a table. However, I will say that at conventions the table fees are a lot more expensive, but from my experience, although the table fee is higher, I've made a lot more money, so I can usually pay it off just fine. I will also say this might be person to person, but for me, I've made really close relationships and good networking opportunities through conventions. At craft markets, it really wasn't for me, so I never really got close to anybody in that kind of way. But once I started selling at conventions, my networking opportunities kind of broadened. You want to make friends with these people. They've got tips, they've got experience, they want to help you out. I've made plenty of friends with people from these conventions and a lot of them have given me some crazy good advice that I couldn't live without. The last thing about conventions that I want to mention, which is more of a con, is that you will probably have to get business insurance. Now, it sounds really scary, but it's honestly just to protect yourself and others. The one that I'm specifically talking about is public liability insurance. This means that, say your stand collapsed and it hurt somebody, that you can be covered from up to £1 million to £3 million. It's highly unlikely, but it's just to make sure that everyone is safe. If you are considering doing conventions, it's just worth double checking if they provide their own insurance that covers you or if you need to get your own. It sounds really scary at first, but honestly you can find plenty of conventions that provide their own insurance, and this is the same with craft markets too. I actually got pretty far without having to need business insurance because a lot of the cons that I went to provided their own, so it's definitely possible to find some that don't need it. In conclusion, selling online is way easier to start with because you don't need resources. You can build a portfolio and trustworthy relationships with clients, but it is harder to build an audience for online stuff. So content creation kind of has to go alongside this, but remember, it's not a competition of followers, but rather making those strong connections with people. Selling in person, a lot more money goes in before you make any profit. You kind of have to find what works, but when you do, it skyrockets. You could definitely form closer relationships and networking opportunities because you're speaking to people in real life and face to face. Selling in person is a lot more hands-on if that's what you're personally looking for. I know I definitely preferred that because I hated being stuck inside doing commissions. But that's just what happened to work for me. Anyways, I really hope that this video has helped somebody out there. If you have any more questions, maybe I'll make a part 2 going into more detail about all this stuff. But yeah, please leave your thoughts in the comments below. And I want to start doing more YouTube stuff. This has been really fun for me to create. I want my account to be kind of surrounding art and gaming. So if that's what you're kind of into, then don't forget to subscribe and maybe leave a like as well if you really want to. This has been Leaf, and thank you so much for watching my video. Bye bye.